that was huge. I think in 2010 and 11, I had some of my best years ever. So much of it was mindset and positivity. And actually, I'd love to go back in time and see, I bet there were huge opportunities that I missed during that painful part because I just closed off my mind. All I was looking at was the worst case scenario. I drive home and instead of seeing my awesome house, I'm thinking, crap, we're going to lose this. And then it was like, okay, we're going to get better next year. We're going to get better next month. Everyone that you networked with and worked with in a different way was feeling the same pain.
Welcome to the Apartment Investing Journey, where we explore every facet of multifamily investing and development with top investors, brokers, and service providers who share their strategies, successes, and secrets to help you on your apartment investing journey.
Hey guys, David Robinson here with the Apartment Investing Journey. Today, I'm joined by MStrong. I'm super excited to have Matt on. I recently ran into Matt as he was presenting at our local RIA meeting, and he really just presented in a way that resonated with me, very authentic, willing to share the bumps and the bruises along the way, and he's got a really cool story. So I asked him to come on short notice, and he was willing to do it, to tell us a little bit about his story. And so without further ado, Matt, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks, David. Thanks for reaching out.
My pleasure. I'm excited to share your story with our audience. Before we do, maybe just give us a little bit of background on yourself in the short 5-minute version of how you got into real estate and all that.
Yeah, cool. So my quick version, really how I got into real estate is my wife and I were buying our first house in, it was 1998, I think. And back then, this is kind of funny because my outlook on how to deal with real estate completely changed years later. But I was like, we both grew up I grew up in Sandy, she grew up in Holiday, I went to the U. So very familiar with the East Side. But I was like, I can't fix anything. I do not want a fixer-upper, even though it would have made a heck of a lot more sense to buy something in Sugar House in like 1998, right? Probably where we would have rather lived. So I'm like, where can we buy something new that's still kind of close? And I mean, it really freaked our parents out because they're, an attorney and a doctor, East Side. And we ended up in Rose Park, West Point.
Oh, wow.
Farm. And I walked into the model home, we were like 23, 24. And gosh, it's impressive now to see real estate investors starting way earlier because I was like late to the game as far as that was concerned. And I graduated from college and I walked in there and we found the house that we wanted. And I said, well, okay, so I want a discount because I'm not an agent. And they said, well, we don't do that, but if you are an agent representing yourself, then we'll pay you a commission. And so I said, great, I'm an agent, right? So I actually hadn't gotten my license yet, but after we left there and signed the papers, I started real estate school. By the time our house closed, I had my license. My uncle was a broker, so he let me put his license with him, and he let me credit myself the commission for the down payment. And then Ivory at the time was doing no closing costs. They'd pay them. So our first house I got into, no money down. Maybe that was like my mindset of like, how do I get into properties, no money down? And so that worked out where I started working for Ivory after buying a home from them. So I worked in the model for 4 years.
What were you doing at that time professionally? Were we going to school at the time still, or had you started a career?
I just finished school and I had started a career, and this will loop into my story if we get into it, but I was working for a group that did self-funded health plans. And at the time it was a friend's brother and their family that owned the company. And I met him at a wedding. I happened to sit next to him. His name is Dave. And Dave's like, dude, you want to come work for me? And so I worked for him for like a year and a half. And I finally got to the point where I was kind of self-sustaining, like, justifying my salary. I think I was making $36,000 a year on salary. And I was like, so stoked. And then Ivory came along and I'm like, Dave, this looks pretty good. I kind of want to get into real estate. But I maintained a great relationship with Dave. So Dave will come in and play later because he really helped fund between loans that I've done and flips that I've done. I mean, I forget how many, but hundreds and tens and 20s, 30s, 40, 50 millions of dollars worth of fundings for me. And he was my quote unquote original boss. He's really the only guy I've ever gotten a W-2 from that wasn't my own LLC. So I was feeling, that's why we bought a house, because I feel like we were stable, ready to go, get up and running. But Ivory, awesome company. But for me, sitting in a model, I could just sense that I was going to die a really, really slow death. It wasn't stimulating. It was kind of like order taking. It kind of felt like a monkey could have sold 80% of the whole houses I sold. People would come in. Ivory does such a great job marketing. He was like, I want this floor plan. It's like, cool, I just made $7,000. So fast forward, a buddy of mine from high school, he had already been in the distressed arena helping other investors find and fix and flip houses. And we've been buddies since elementary school. So he says, hey, I want to do a house. Do you want to do it with me? So in 2004, we ended up doing a couple of houses together. Our first one was out in Kearns, and we got it done. We made like 20 grand. And so I'm like, oh, this could be something that could replace sitting in the model. It's actual real estate. I never had wanted to, and I still really am not comfortable being an agent, like a traditional retail agent. I mean, I'm a broker now. I have my own brokerage. I've been a broker for 13 years or so. I mean, I do that stuff, but my family probably still doesn't know I'm a real estate agent. I just don't ever promote that. So that world began fixing and flipping houses. 2004. I mean, this is the quick summary. We've done together. I did the bulk of my houses with him, although we kind of split ways officially a little over a year ago. So I credit a lot of my early success to like him having a few months or a year ahead of me doing this. But then we got into a groove. We've done over 400 together. We were known as MS2 properties. People would always say, hey, oh, there's another MS2 house, right? Or whatever, right? So those were houses we were kind of slinging together. And then that parlayed into other investors that we'd network with say, hey, where are you getting your money? And by then I'd set up an IRA, a self-directed IRA, couldn't lend it to myself. So we started brokering these loans, and then that kind of snowballed. And then catch up to now, I've kind of rearranged the business model and the structure, but I kind of like to think I have 4 buckets. I've got the hard money. I've got the flips, which I'm still flipping, maybe not as much as I used to because the hard money's taken a lot more of my time. The hard money private lending, the flipping. I have long-term rentals, and we'll maybe talk about a couple of those today. And then I have my brokerage. The brokerage I found kind of helps facilitate me buying stuff myself, getting in and out of it, and then evaluating deals myself for the hard money loans. But I mean, that's really, really quick. I've lived in Utah, all my adult life. I've been married for 21 years, got 3 great kids. We live in kind of the Willow Creek, Cottonwood Heights area. And so things are good. It's a beautiful fall day here. You couldn't ask for a better moment in time for me.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you giving us that summary and a little bit of background on yourself. You got a ton of experience flipping over 400 homes and now moving into the private lending side of the business and brokerage. And so you have a lot going on, which is exciting. And I want to dive into now your parlay into mid-sized multifamily here in a minute. But I want people to hear your story about that time when the market took a dive and where you were with your family, because that resonated with me, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of people about what that was like in your life and how you overcame it and how you pushed forward through that. And then we'll maybe sort of fast forward to getting into the apartment stuff because that's the topic of our podcast. But I want people to hear that part of the story for you and the resilience that, helped you get through that.
Yeah. So let's rewind back to like 2007, the start of 2008. For anyone who was around back then, it was such a weird feeling. It felt like too good to be true that anyone could get out there and get a loan. In the fix and flip world, it almost felt for different reasons like it does now, where it was so hard to find a deal. All the regular places you used to go to find deals, like the MLS was just overcrowded. The whole wholesale world like it exists now did not exist back then. So there were still underground people finding houses, but it wasn't, like the internet and stuff has really changed how people do wholesales. So we were kind of in that groove. And so then we started getting into, okay, let's do some spec homes, right? Let's do some land development. Like the flips aren't going as well. We've already got those mastered. We can jump up into this next product type, right? And so we were really kind of knee deep in a townhome project and then 3 spec homes in particular. And then we also still had some flips going on. And so we had come off some pretty good years. We had good confidence or whatever. And then rumbling started happening, right? And it's like things really started slowing down. We'd getting feedback from land partner on the townhomes, and then our spec stuff is like you could see prices start sliding. We had just refinanced into some bank loans, some of our private lenders right in time, right? Because otherwise maybe my future would have been different because we would have had issues with private lenders instead of institutional lenders. And it's hard to go back and remember all the steps by steps that led up to it. But ultimately, it got to the point where we were feeling squeezed enough, right? And stroking that interest payment check on land that really we could see was not going anywhere. And spec homes that we were seeing, what we thought we were going to be able to sell for like $650 are now like, I don't know, maybe $450. The speculation was so crazy that I think we just kind of lost our heads because we thought, hey, if the money is there to do it, let's do it. It should be a good deal, right? So I think you lost some of the fundamentals of like, well, okay, well, what happens if, like those conversations we weren't having? It was just like, well, we got the money, let's go. And so we were just writing interest checks right after another. And then we slowly were, we were involved in some other projects where maybe we weren't fully had our neck on the line. And we could start to see the pain being suffered by other guys like selling townhomes or like, oh crap, we got to start doing workouts. So there was a time where nothing was positive, right? It was just all doom and gloom. It was just negative. It was like, and I think we kind of kept telling ourselves a story of like, we'll be different. Nah, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. We'll be different. And then it got real, like where it was like, okay, for real, this is whatever it was, probably like $8,000 or $9,000 a month. We're never getting this back. It was that reality of like, we're never getting it back. And then you slowly started feeling like you were suffocating. And then it was like, crap, I can't default on a loan. I've never done that. And so then you start feeling like a pile of trash because you're like, oh crap, I might actually not make this payment. For me personally, to be honest, to make it worse, for whatever reason at that time, those loans, the ones that were recourse and on credit, I was the one that put those in my name in the partnership, just for whatever reason, right? So it was a little different for me, I think, because I knew it was my credit. I knew how it worked, right? Like if I miss, that's going to be a late payment. My name's going to be out there for a notice of default, all the names I'd see when we'd go to the courthouse. And at that point in my life personally, we were maybe 3 or 4 years into a brand new Ivory home. We had moved since the Rose Park. We had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and just barely had our youngest. We had kind of 2 brand new cars. Like I said, things had been going well. So we're like, yeah, we can do all this. So I'm like, I had a home equity line of credit that we were starting to use to start making these interest payments. I started panicking. I'm like, I've got to get out of this. So the only thing I could think of was we just got to go talk to the banks. So I ended up having a foreclosure. I tried really hard to communicate with the banks, but if anyone remembers back then, it was so hard to get a live body on the phone. And so after emails and letters, I finally just sent like a letter saying, you know what, I'm not making any more payments. I'm sorry. Do what you need to do. I mean, I felt like trash. Luckily on our short sales, we could talk to an actual bank manager, like the bank president, because it was a local credit union. And he was really cool. He's like, you know what, I understand it. Help us finish these houses, because they were like halfway done. Obviously, you guys aren't going to get anything out of these, but help us get them sold and at least help us get as much of our money back as possible. So we did that. And at least that kind of like, okay, well, we can at least still be involved. At least we're doing something to try and mitigate this situation. But it was July 2009 when that foreclosure hit. And it was just so depressing. I was just like in such a dark place. But in my communication with my wife wasn't, it was just like, no, things are good. But I wasn't telling her my full mind. So I was kind of not keeping it from her, but I think I was trying to just protect everybody. So I just kind of let that build up. And I finally just kind of broke down. We had one of those nights. And in the meantime, I'm like interviewing at companies for jobs. And I'm like, I haven't had a real job my whole life. And here I am. I mean, I didn't even know what I was doing, resume and stuff. I mean, it was so uncomfortable. And so I remember one night I'm like, babe, we got to sit down. And I'm like bawling, right? And I'm like, listen, we're losing that house. We're getting short sold on that house. Whatever little income we have coming in from whatever it was, I am paying that out in losses that are never going to be recovered. So it was like the second year or midway through the second year of really just treading water. And I still had some savings, but in my mind, I automatically went to like worst case scenario.
Sure.
We are done. So we sat down and we were talking and, I'm just a mess. And I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, if this keeps going on, we're going to lose the house. We're going to lose. And again, the reality was obviously we were probably a year away from that. But in my mind, we were already there.
Sure. It spirals to worst case.
It spirals to worst case. And it's like you wake up with gloom and doom. You go to sleep with gloom and doom. You can't sleep at night because you're just always thinking, what have I done? What have I gotten this into? Why didn't I save money? Why did we buy that car? Why did we move?
Yeah.
You're kind of like second guessing all of these decisions. And I was just going through like, if we have to sell the house. And it finally came down to, I'm like, well, babe, what if we have to live in the Tahoe? It's an 8-seater. We could probably make it work. And obviously we could have stayed with my parents or something. But I'm like, if we have to stay in the Tahoe, and she just kind of cut me off. She's like, listen, if that's it, we're going to be fine. I love you and you're going to figure it out. And it was like at that moment, I still get chills thinking about it right now, because I'm like, oh, I should have talked to you like a year ago, okay, we can do this. And so the situation didn't change. It was still crap. I still had a foreclosure. We still had short sales. We were still telling our friends, how's work going? Yeah, well, I don't know. I just had foreclosure and,
right.
It's really good, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just another one of these statistics of someone that other people not in the industry are kind of laughing at. Like, yeah, I kind of catch up to you, you greedy real estate guys.
Right.
But then it was a total pivot and change for me, where it was, okay, if that's the worst case scenario, I'm still realistically kind of far away from that. I've got so much runway here. Then it was, how do we figure this out? I immediately left all thoughts of working for someone else. It was like, okay, it kind of gave like that kickstart. That was like July. So then really I have to go back and look, but it was the end of 2009 that it was like, let's go just back to our bread and butter and buying houses.
Wow.
So that was huge. I think in 2010 and 11, I had some of my best years ever.
That's cool.
And so much of it was mindset and positivity. And actually, I'd love to go back in time and see, I bet there were huge opportunities that I missed during that painful part, because I just closed off my mind. All I was looking at was the worst case scenario. I drive home, and instead of seeing my awesome house, I'm thinking, crap, we're going to lose this.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, we're going to get better next year. We're going to get better next month. So that was probably what you're referring to. It was like 2 years of that. So it's hard to say it in like 7 minutes. But
sure.
Because everyone that you networked with and worked with in a different way was feeling the same pain. It was like, dude, we're getting hammered. We're getting hammered. We're getting hammered. This sucks. We just lost this. We lost this. So like everybody around you was just like getting kicked to the curb. Agents were going back to work because they couldn't sell listings. You remember how it was, right? It was,
sure.
And then it was kind of like, it sucks that there's opportunities when things go bad, but in a way, that's just the reality of real estate. Real estate's awesome for investors when people have hardship, when there's divorce, when there's it's just the reality. That's when there's opportunities. And hopefully you deal with those in a respectful way. And I'm super grateful to that bank president, because he set such a cool example. He's like, you guys, I appreciate you coming to talk to me. I get it. I've been here before. I get that you guys could just throw up your hands and walk away. You guys understand that we have houses that still need to be built. You seem capable. Finish them. And I don't know if that was just karma for going to him, but he actually didn't end up filing any sort of deficiency or anything. Nothing even hit our credit on those. So we really lucked out. But the lesson to me now is in being in the shoes of a lender, when a borrower isn't maybe, having some hiccups, as long as they communicate with me, they're honest, they're just tell me what it is. I mean, we can solve the problem together. The issues I have is when it's someone else's fault. It wasn't their fault. They're blaming someone else. They're not taking responsibility. So that experience, as hard as it was, I'm so glad to have gone through it, because it reminds you of what's important. And then it reminds you of, really, at the end of the day, the best principle is always just tell the truth, be honest, fess up to it. And it is what it is. That was that experience.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And there was a lot of people at that time that didn't make that shift that you made in their mindset. Yep. Maybe didn't have the same support from a spouse that you did. Maybe it was in a little bit different scenario. Maybe didn't handle the bank situation the same way you did. But that's your reality. And it ended up working out for you. You made that shift in your mindset, and then you moved forward and you stayed in the real estate business. And not only did you stay, but you pushed forward in a way that got you back into a mode where you were thriving. And so let's maybe move things forward a little bit. You start to come out of this dark place and things start to roll for you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how things played out from there.
Yeah, then it was just kind of like bliss of flipping for like 6 or 7 years. There were a few years, and then at one point we added a third partner, Chris, and he's awesome, and he had a ton of experience. So we had 3 or 4 back-to-back years where we were doing 50, 60 houses a year.
Wow.
We were just like high volume. My day every day was wake up, hunt the MLS, offer on a few houses, check out my properties, see how they're coming along. I wasn't too strategic back then. It was just kind of like go with the flow, buy, sell, flip, flip, flip. Mm-hmm. And so along the way too, we're like, oh, let's pick up this rental, but it wasn't super strategic. Like I want these for long-term cash flow. I mean, this would be a whole other podcast for another day about partnering on long-term assets. At times you don't maybe always have alignment with maybe a partner about exactly how it makes sense in 5, 10 years, 15 years. Because even I don't know, right? But so we'd buy stuff sometimes and we maybe didn't put it together the right way. We maybe had an adjustable rate arm that wasn't realistic to keep long-term. So I learned a lot there about how maybe not to set up rentals, whether they're just single family duplex or fourplex or whatever. But it was kind of that just fix and flip. And so I kind of felt like something was missing. Maybe I was getting kind of complacent. And so I had an experience that introduced me to the Masters of Real Estate Development program at just in general. And a buddy of mine was doing that at USC. And I'm like, I want to do that at the U, because I've always been a U guy, right? Like I did my undergrad there. I love the Utes. And so I'm like, what better place? I can do it at night. My kids were still young enough. I could do school at nights. So when I went through that, it was a 2-year program. And I was kind of maybe thinking I needed to mix up a little bit about my arrangement of partnership or whatever, even back then. So I thought, well, this will be a good little mix up just to see if I'm on the right path or whatever. And I thought, heck, who knows? Maybe there's another opportunity out there that I haven't looked at. And it was kind of there that I'm like, networking's really cool. Like I always have friends or whatever, but I would never go to the RIAs, kind of like you were mentioning earlier. I was a little bit more of an introvert. I mean, obviously I was talking with people because I was doing deals and whatever, but it's not like I was going up and meeting other investors and stuff like that. But at the MRED, there's a bunch of different people, a bunch of younger people. And that was kind of like, this is really cool. Like I'm getting tons of energy from being with all these people that are really smart. And I concluded through that process that it probably wasn't for me to go work for a Boyer company or Wasatch or something like that, like a bigger company. I learned I need to get better at networking, do deals with the guys from my class, and learn some of these concepts about multifamily or whatever on a little bit of a higher level. And it was there that I was determined. I think we maybe I had like a single family home. I had a couple single family homes, but nothing real substantial as far as long-term rentals. So that's one thing I definitely regret. So for people listening, figure out sooner than later how to start buying smartly long-term holds, right? And I mean, I really wish along the way we would have saved 10% of every property. I think we were too into digging ourselves out of the hole from the crash.
Sure.
So it's like every penny we got, I'm like, let's just keep it. Let's just keep it. Instead of, oh, wow, these houses in Kearns we were buying for $50,000. In 2019, they're worth $300,000. Like, right. That'd be good equity, right? So anyway, so I'm like, I don't know, it was about a year and a half into the program. I'm like, this is $35,000 in tuition. I've got to get something out of this. And I knew I was getting something out of it just with the relationships, but I'm like, I got to do a deal. We've been underwriting in classes, all these multifamily, learning different pro formas, simple stuff, NOI, cap rate, looking at it financially from different levels. And I'm like, this now makes a lot more sense to me than it ever did before, just because I'd really never peeled off the time to really focus on it, because it was always just a quick turn. Sure. And so I'm like, I got to find something. And so I started looking on auction.com, and now that site's changed, I think, to 10X. And back then, auction.com, they had deals everywhere. Lots of deals in Utah. They had deals in all these other states.
What was the timeline? What year was this?
So this would have been probably like the end of 2014. So the end of 2014, the start of 2015. And I saw this 14-plex in Tooele. And I mean, I'll admit still to this day, I didn't ever go out there while I was bidding on it. They had all the due diligence material. So like you could look at title report, rent rolls, pictures. And I just kind of like, I don't know. We had flipped a lot in Tooele. So I'm like, I'm not driving out of Tooele, but I want to buy this thing, right? So, and I'd bought stuff on auctions. And so I'm thinking, worst case, they keep my earnest money. But you never have a deal till you have a deal. And then you can always say no after, right? It was kind of my approach. And so I'm driving on the freeway, headed to my office on I-215, making the bend around Old Mill, coming west. And it was like 30 seconds left. And I'm on my iPhone driving. And I'm like, bid, and you always have in your head, like, you're going to go to 700. In my head, I was like 700,000 tops. So I'm like, bid. And it's like, now it's at 715. And I'm like, will this thing end? And I don't even know now. I bet I was bidding against the minimum bid robot at auction.com. And finally, I'm getting off the freeway, and I think the final number was like 690, but they had fees after that. So it put it up above 7. And so I got it and it said winning bid. And I'm like, fantastic. My heart's racing, adrenaline, because one, I'm on the freeway, and two, I'm like, this would be like the biggest purchase I've ever made.
Yeah.
And it was 14 units. And I hadn't really told anyone about it, even my business partner at the time, because I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe I'll just do this on my own.
Sure.
Because it was thinking like, I'm the one that's going to school for this. So I get back and I DocuSign all the documents and I wire $5,000. And I'm thinking, okay, I got 45 days to figure this out. If it doesn't work out, great. I lose $5,000. Who cares? And auction.com calls me the next day and they're like, hey, you know what? You left a 0 off of the wire. They're like, sometimes that happens. So I quickly review all the documents and I'm like, oh, it says 50,000. So you can see sometimes my attention to detail when I'm in a hurry, like I just kind of breeze over it. It's a $50,000 non-refundable earnest money deposit, close in 45 days. And I'm like, cool. Well, I'll get that to you. So I immediately drive out to Tooele and I go to look at it for the first time.
And this is the first time you've seen it?
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen it. By then I'd already signed the contract and sent the 5,000. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this kind of looks like it did. But I'm still scared enough that I'm not jumping on the roof, walking through the units. I'm kind of like, okay, this will work. Sure, I've seen it in person, check. And so I get back and then it's like, okay, well, the only way I'm sending 45,000 is if I know I'll have the money in 45 days to close on it. And so my partner at the time, we had a joint contact that was lending us money. So we lined up a meeting with him. Coolest dude ever. I just visited his office a couple weeks ago. Super, super wealthy. I'm guessing hundreds of millions, but just a down to earth guy. And I knew we could talk to him. And so we went to his office and I'm just like, hey, this is the scenario. By this point in time, he had probably lent this money on at least 100 or 150 houses. So we had a really good track record with him.
Yeah.
And I just said, listen, this is where I'm at. I've been going to school, kind of just to tell him like, this is not some just fly by night. I bid on this. These are the numbers. This is why I think it makes sense. Can you do a 3-year loan at a pretty good rate so that we can, I painted the plan. We're going to buy it. We're going to get the rents where they need to be. We're going to rehab what we need to rehab. We're going to have a full year of operating data. Then we're going to take you out with a long-term bank loan. And I feel like looking back, we were in that meeting for like 5 minutes. It was probably 30 minutes to an hour. But he's just one of those guys that looked at me. He's like, yeah, I can do that. That's all I needed. And so then I'm like, okay, game on. Let's go. I knew he wanted a little bit money down, but not a lot. I think he wanted us to put like 5% down. So that's nothing on that big of a purchase, right? So it was like $75,000. And so I went right back to the office. I wired the other 45,000. So now we're locked in. And that was my first bigger than a duplex purchase. And so we closed on it. It honestly has gone better than I thought. Other than from the get-go when we first bought it, what we didn't realize is what we were buying was like meth central in Tooele. And we'd park, and it was funny because I ended up bringing my partner at the time and then a couple of other buddies from high school, just because I thought, man, this is going to be really labor intensive to Tooele to manage it ourselves for the first little bit. But those guys that are on BMX bikes, that are like 35, 40, they have their hat on backwards, the jeans,
long hair.
They have a plastic sack from the grocery store on their handlebars, like a 2-liter of Mountain Dew. Guys like that were just rolling nonstop in and out of these apartments.
Oh, man.
Long story short, over the course of a year and a half, we just kind of cleaned house. I think we ended up with one remaining tenant from when we first bought it. We got it to the point where we had solid full calendar year of operating data. By that time, we had owned it for about a year and a half. We bought it in March of 2015. So by December of 2016, we had it like operating pretty good. We had turned rents from like $550 to $750. So we had created a lot of value. And at that point, I could tell we were losing steam like on driving out there and maintaining it.
Sure.
And so we found an awesome property manager that was local. So that's another tip. Find someone that can manage it, that knows what they're doing. Her office was right down the road. So Tooele is a little bit more of a unique market. I think you do have to find someone that understands the tenant base there. So we've owned it now for 4 years. I haven't been out there. I've been out there once in 2 years. And that first year we owned it, I was out there once or twice a week. So it really took away from my core money-making business of flipping. But it was necessary to learn a little bit more about what we didn't know with the bigger apartment, and then to understand after a little bit of time, there's someone else that can do this better than us. And so that property now today is making us more money after we're paying a 10% management fee than we were making managing it ourselves. And we've been able to, through cash flow, slowly reimburse ourselves for the capital down payment. So today, as of today, we're into that property, no money out of pocket, like $0, because we've taken back our capital, our original capital through cash flow. It's probably cash flowing $25,000 a year. So not like a crazy amount, but that's with no money invested.
Yeah.
And we're continually repairing it each month, something on the property, right? Because we want this to be kind of a longer term hold. But the best part about it is I don't do anything anymore. I just give Sandy a high five, give her some gift certificates to the Wendover Casino because she likes going out there. And I'm just like her biggest cheerleader, and she does a great job. During that time frame, then my mind switched like, how can I get more of these rentals with no money out of pocket? And so using that kind of like Burr method, buying them so I bought a fourplex off auction.com. We bought a fourplex, a wholesaler. We bought some duplexes and single family homes and did it all the same way. Bought it with cash or private money, kind of bought it with a flip mentality, improved it enough, got renters in there, and then refinanced it. And so of all my 46 units that I'm a part of now, I mean, I'm not lying. I have $0 out of pocket. And they're all on aggregate, probably like 65 or 70% of legit ARV. And it's just because we created that through buying it right and structuring it right and financing it right. And so those are harder to find right now, but I'm super excited when things slow down a little bit to use that same model and keep my credit clean so that you can do that because
take advantage of those opportunities.
Take advantage of it. Yeah. So, and then the other little parlay that connects all of these together is the hard money lending side. I had a contact from the MRED that came to me and said, hey, I own some land out in Tooele. There's a 16-plex. I need to buy it because I want it to be part of a bigger project. And will you lend on it to me? And I'm like, well, we just refinance this 14-plex around the corner. The numbers are almost identical. I'm like, yeah, we can do it. So he put 20% down. The values given that extra 2 units were really almost identical. So I'm like, the underwriting on this is pretty easy. My own comp that we've owned for 2 years is the best one. So long story short on that one, he ended up defaulting. We did a deed in lieu with him where we took the property back as the lending group. And then we did the exact same things we did on the 14-plex. We got the same commercial lender, Bank of the West. They refinanced out my primary investor, all of our funds. So now there's 2 apartments, small apartments in Tooele that we're into, no money out of pocket. Same management companies managing them both. They're right close by each other. They're older assets, right? They're like a C at best. So their appreciation might not be amazing, but being into them nothing and having really a good cushion of the cash flow, I just look at it like, I mean, we'll wake up in 10 or 15 years and at least have $3 million sitting there, that we could roll into something. And maybe there'll be an opportunity between now and then to roll up into something different or combine them and roll up into a nicer asset. But for me, that was just a huge success that really kind of piggybacked upon life's lessons, flipping, not being content, pushing yourself to like do something different like the MRED, the opportunities that came out of that I didn't think were going to come out of that. So then it gets me super excited for like what's next. So that's why I've really enjoyed going to the RIAs, because look at this. I mean, by going to the RIAs after a little bit of time of getting some traction there, and they invite me to speak, I meet you, right?
Yeah.
Like, who knows where this will all go? Who might hear the story and impact them through your podcast or whatever. So it's just another reminder, like you were saying before we started recording, I got to continue to get out there. And I think what you're doing is awesome. You've probably seen some amazing benefits from just inviting people to talk with you.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I'm just inspired by your story. I think others will be too, as they hear this and those that have heard your story. And it's not all fun and games, right? There's still challenges. There's still risks. There's still frustrations, but there's opportunities, and you were resilient and you learned and you pushed forward and you just have made the best of the situation that you were in at the time and continue to grow and to learn and progress and make connections. And I think it's a great story. I'd love to dive deeper. We're running short on time. So I think down the road, I'd like to have you come on and talk a little bit more about these specific deals, or maybe a future one that you do. And
Sure.
We can dive into the nuts and bolts of, how you go about acquiring it, how you funded it, how you, refinanced into it and all that.
Yeah.
But I think this is a great story that will resonate with a lot of people and inspire some people. And I appreciate you coming on to share it with us.
Cool. Absolutely. And I've loved it. And I know you'll include my contact information on your show notes. If anybody wants to chat about those specifically before we maybe have a chance to regroup on it, just shoot me a text or an email. And I'm more than happy to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
I think just text me or call me. 801-244-3888 is my cell. And, like everybody, I always have it near me or on me.
Great.
So we can, chat then.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all that in the show notes. Matt, thanks again so much for coming on. I appreciate your time and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Hey guys, thanks for listening in today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Please hit that subscribe button or leave us a quick review. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, or at apartmentinvestingjourney.com. See you next week.